Okay, so there's more to this whole situation that I wanted to talk about with the whole uppity thing. Um I kind of correlate this together though. Think of it. Isn't Seattle like one of those areas that has like the most racist history or something? It's either Washington or Oregon that's like the most racist state and was always the most racist state as long as it was a part of the 50 states of the United States. This is important to acknowledge because I think it's related to what she's talking about. And I feel like this is related to how Cynthia G is too. Now, I don't think that this means that they hate themselves necessarily. I don't think that this is a thing about that. I'm saying that I think this is what shapes some black people in those environments. And this isn't specific to her, but something she said about her family, really. That to me, I'm like, is there a connection there? You know, I don't know. It's just something I thought, you know, that there might be a connection there. And there's something else. She was doing another video on her perception basically on black women and saying black women were less likely to date out than black men. And I kind of feel like, do you really mean to say that, or do you really mean to say something else? And for the sake of my platform, for the sake of her platform, for the sake of what we talk about on our platforms, I don't really want to say what the other thing is. But it's kind of obvious what I'm talking about there. If you paid attention to what I was talking about previously in the origin of the states and things of that nature, you've got to think of who creates it. It's humans that create it. It's a certain type of human that created it, and so forth. Now, that could also have to do with the environment and the shape of how she sees black women as opposed to black men who date interracially and the preference or the interest in doing so. Um, and that's just all I'm going to say there. I'm not going to get too in depth with that because, like I said, I don't ever want to talk about things that make somehow people think it makes black women look badly, even though what I'm saying is not even about black women, nor should it be construed that way, but people always think of it in a negative way against black women. And I will talk about this in another video, about another perspective I have when it comes to situations like this and how we don't put the blame where it belongs because we've been conditioned so long not to understand where to put the blame and quit putting it on other people. But anyway, I'm not gonna get into that too much. So, this video though is not even really about that. She's talking about black womanhood, and I'm like, I think, I really think she's getting into a thing that has to do with why my mother's family wasn't really accepted by black women in some regards. So, I just want to talk about it a little bit. As far as I can relate to her video, I'm going to basically record. So let's go. And I might not post this today because I already posted a few videos of her. So I might spread this one out and do it for later and then just do some other ones on other topics. But these are actually going to be positive. Like I said with Uppity, there's things I agree with her on, and then there's things about her that I just don't agree with. And sometimes I can get really fussy, because I'll get really touchy about a subject and I'll get all cranky. But then other times it's like, oh, right on. Exactly. Kind of thing. Anyway, continue. I want to hear.
Dolezal, right? A white woman who calls herself black or, whatever, I would be, biracial. because I was raised in large part, right? Because my mom would go out and mule for her entire family, just work herself to the bone. And I'd be left at home with these men and all their commentary on Black women. To some degree, I can say that I was raised by the manosphere. And that's why I know that they're so problematic and so dangerous. Because my extended family is just straight up 1990s, early 2000s, Seattle, Washington. And as a Black woman, you don't want nothing to do with that. You don't want nothing to do with that. But that was my upbringing. What does that mean? The way that I interact, and I think this is probably the reason why I haven't caught on in Black YouTube and whatever else, because the women who love me, the women who feel me, I mean, there are always a few really good Black women who just love me, but like on average, no, we're not a vibe. And I can honestly say that it's
That's the thing. I've always noticed that too for me. That I've always found that it's easier to relate and interact with people who are specifically usually of European, like white American descent, or maybe biracial, but only biracials who have a certain background. I think mostly around white people, but this is a thing that I've noticed with my mother too. So I kind of am like, I don't know, like, is this normal for all Black Americans who come from the North? I always thought it was a Northern thing as opposed to a Southern thing, maybe a cultural thing. I don't know what it is, but I mean, in that regard, I've always noticed that, as far as the vibe situation, it's only a few types of Black women that are relatable, and usually it's those who can relate more with white, or I don't really see it as white women, I see it as mainstream women rather than non-mainstream women. Many Black women aren't really mainstream in my opinion, therefore I'm not going to really relate to them because they're not really mainstream. They're not really within the culture or the same dynamic that I grew up in. They don't understand the same norms that I understand. We were raised differently. And this is how you know that color doesn't really define a human being, really. Color just is our outer shell, but we are actual individuals and people and individual souls, and we aren't connected to our color at the end of the day. But continue.
The way that I interact. I am not a Karen, but I'm definitely a Becky. And let's say something like the angry Black woman stereotype, because basically, in effect, what my uncles did to me.
I don't get it. Is Karen supposed to be a white woman? I thought Karen was all old women, right? Because I've always thought my mother is definitely a Karen, from the descriptions that people give. Usually it has to do with, I understand some people try to say Karen is white because don't they associate Karens sometimes with conservative women? But the thing is, many women who are conservative can be Black, mixed, Asian, Hispanic. So then, I mean, if they're middle-aged women who are conservative, wouldn't that mean that they were Karens? That's what I just always assumed. But yeah, continue.
But my uncles, cousins, extended male family, they essentially dragged every Black woman in my presence by African American stereotypes until that kind of negative reinforcement dragged all of that out of me. So I grew up kind of a unicorn where I just did not embody a single Black girl stereotype except for, the defender, right? And of course I would end up being the defender because they raised me a pro-Black. So I was, the one Black quality that I got was mammying hardcore. was defending Black men hardcore, was loving them more than myself, exalting them, praising them, worshiping them over myself, over my own image, and always putting Black men before Black women and Black everything else, right? The one thing they did leave me with, right? And it makes sense because, I mean, that's how a lot of white women are as well. They will love Black men and protest for Black men, but they hate Black women. And here's the deal, like,
I think if ever that really is the case, usually that's only by experience of racism. Sometimes when white women appreciate black men and they are into black women will be racist against them. And so then of course they're defensive towards their attraction and interest in black men. You know, that's gonna come as a second nature because you're going to be used to trying to defend yourself in these situations, you know. So that's, I don't think that means they hate them. I think it's just more so they're ready to get attacked for basically being attracted to what they're attracted to. And, you know, I relate to that honestly because I mean, like, on the other side of it, it's like you experience basically the same thing. Maybe from different types of people, sometimes from the same types of people. You might experience it from black women. You might experience it from black men. You might experience it from white people of either sex. You know, you just experience it. Continue.
If it doesn't apply, please let it fly. If you're white under the sound of my voice and I'm not talking to you, then I'm not talking to you. Just period. If you're better than that, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for humanity. But, you know, I'm just going to tell the story about the people who are not. So the angry black woman stereotype, for example, in my adulthood, I have learned that that is a very beneficial thing to be. It is an immensely beneficial thing to be an angry black woman.
I don't get that. What do you mean an angry black woman? Who does that? I thought only people like who didn't know how to act like, you know, angry black women or angry white women or whoever's angry, you know? I don't know, that just seems a little odd to me. But continue. There's something that she says after this that's interesting.
Because when you, as a black woman, say, hey, this is wrong, that's what gets people to get right.
Oh, yeah, for real. Sometimes that is true for certain black people, and it's like annoying. Because they'll be so disrespectful, and they'll be so rude, and people will just cater to them all about basically. And basically treat them like queens because they basically treated them like trash. That's why some people teach you how to treat them. You know, they don't really want you to respect them. They don't really want you to basically treat them with some type of ethic or treat them with some kind of like honor. You know, some people don't want that. They want to be kept in check by, you know, being basically put on their toes because if they're not on their toes, they're just going to run over you. You know, some people are like that. So, I mean, in those situations, yeah, the more cantankerous type of individual will either stick around or they will be gone quickly. You know, it's a one thing or another. It's not dragged on. It's not added pain, you know. You know, it does seem beneficial, I guess.
When you have that woman who can out-talk and over-talk anybody, she defeats injustice. Whereas I'm very soft-spoken. I mean, I can holler, but my nature is that of a soft-spoken person. My nature, I cry. And if you follow my channel, you know it. I'm just a. I can get out of a ticket the same way a white girl can get out of a ticket because my fragility is similar. So a cop comes up to my car, I'm trembling, I'm crying. And immediately his masculinity just kind of, kind of like how my maternity, if there's a kid crying, I'm like, oh, baby, I just immediately turn into mommy, auntie until, mommy or auntie shows up. But like immediately I'm like, and it's not an act. I'm shaking, I'm crying, my nose is running, my mascara is running. And they're just like, man, you're gonna be okay. It's just, this is a blah 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 zone, and I didn't know if you know. I'll let you off with a warning, but please be careful, blah blah. And I'm like, oh my god, okay, I'm so sorry. And that happens very naturally for me because essentially the Black woman was beaten out of me, and I do mean
The whole crying thing, though, that's not a white woman trait. That's a woman trait. Women do that. They cry so then people can leave them alone or whatever. My mother, for one, I never saw my mother really cry unless it was to get something. I don't think my mother has ever wanted to actually cry. I don't even think she has the emotion to cry. But if she wants something, then she's gonna cry, basically. If she can't get it any other way. That's just her, I would never stoop to that level, one. And plus, I kind of feel like, you know, being a black woman, many of the time people kind of see it as they don't want to see a black woman as fragile. If anything, if you were to cry, you're just kind of seen as broken and like fucked up. So, I mean, like, I wouldn't ever try to do that because it would just kind of like mess up the whole situation even more. And plus, I mean, like, it's just like, to me, you know, people like to view black women a certain way, and that's not just the whole thing of black women. See, some black women can pull it off. Like, for example, my mother could pull it off because she's really small. She's only 4'11" and 90 pounds. If you are 5'1" and 110 pounds, people start to think of you as a big bodybuilder, basically. It doesn't take much to be seen as a big bodybuilder either. Because it's just like, studies have shown that people tend to think of black people as kind of like superhuman. So basically, we shouldn't have emotions of weakness or crying or things of that nature. We shouldn't have emotions, basically, and we shouldn't be sad or feel pain or anything like that. We can't feel pain, basically, in their minds. So, crying would be a sign of showing that you feel pain. And you can't really feel pain if you're superhuman and you're a black person because black people don't feel pain. So, I mean, like, it doesn't really help to do such a thing in some regards. But if someone is already very feeble and small, then someone may overlook the fact that someone is black because they'll be like, well, they're so small that of course they can feel pain. Of course they do have weakness. Of course they are not completely strong in Teflon. Of course they are not superhuman. You get what I'm saying. But continue.
physically beaten. I don't just mean the negative reinforcement and the poisonous language against Black women. And mind you, these were men, not all of them, not my mother's older brothers, but definitely my mother's younger brothers were living off of a Black woman who fulfilled very many of the stereotypes that they hated so much. And it's a crazy thing because everybody is in love with my mom. My mom is a celebrity figure in my community, in the various communities we have belonged to. She is the most unforgettable person. Everyone leans on her. People act like they're going to die without her. People act like they can't do anything without her. And in turn, she also gets a lot of love, right? Because she is 100% dedicated to the game of muling. My mom will not come and visit you at your house and stay with you for the weekend unless she cleans your entire house. My mom will never allow herself to be anybody's burden, whereas I'm a total white girl. I will lock myself in a room. I will sit down. I will need help. Help. I'm fragile. Help. I'm sad. I can't move. I can't this. And none of that is effective for Black womanhood. With Black womanhood, it's like you have to be able to take it on the chin. You have to be able to keep going. You have to be able to be Ketanji Brown Jackson sitting there and being berated. You can't just break down and cry. The only time she cried is when a Black man came up there and said, they're not going to steal my joy. I see you, I see my mom, and oh my God, I'm happy. That is the only time she cried. I would have been a mess in Ketanji's seat, which is why I'm not seated in it, because Ketanji got there because she has the tools of Black womanhood. Harvard almost drove that woman crazy, being a Black woman on that campus, but because she has the tools of Black womanhood, of old school, dark skin, whatever you want to call it, Black womanhood, she is a success.
Why are you just assuming it's dark skin, though? What you're describing actually seems more familiar with what my mother would express, but I don't express that myself, and my mother's dark skin. I'm the same color as you. So obviously it doesn't have to do with skin tone. Please do not associate behavior with skin tone. That's just really weird when those things are done. I mean, it really is. Please try a little better. But good. So far, I like this video.
With Black text, you have to be 3 times as good as anybody else, right? You have to be an overachiever to get what the average white person gets. Me? No. I go to work and do exactly what Becky does. And you know what happens? I get in trouble for doing what Becky does. And I'm like, oh my God, but like, what's the difference between my work and her work? I'm supposed to be better. I'm supposed to be so much better. And I'm just like, but it's not fair. Right?
I don't get it. What do you mean?
Out. Not decked out, backed out.
Yeah, I don't really get what she's talking about here at all. What do you mean put in the same work that... You're saying that white people never work hard? Like, white people work hard sometimes. Black people work less hard sometimes. Like I was saying about the whole thing about, you were saying the angry Black woman. In many cases, from what I've experienced, many times people would try and speak on how they weren't going to do this or they weren't going to do that, and like at a job and things of that nature, and people would hold them to those standards and treat them like queens, basically, because they just did the minimum, basically, and they would promote them off of the minimum, basically because they put their work as a higher value for the same work as other people, basically. Other people who would just pour in their work and just pour into it and not be so demanding, not be so complaining, not so argumentative, would actually get trampled on. So it was always those who were actually more outspoken. And the case that you're talking about, I could think of many Black women who actually fit that idea of things, and they did get further in their job than other people who didn't. So,
I mean, no armor. No armor. And you know what happens to Black girls like me? Everybody picks on you. Everybody bullies you. Now, here's the thing that gets me back into my defender, right? I'm an Aries. First of all, it's Aries season, so gang, gang. But I mean, I have that blow up, right? So that the crazy white girl blow up, where it's just like, the great big scream. But that happens on field hand genetics. So it's incredible what I can do to a vehicle. It's incredible what I can do to a wall, a door. It's
I do not get what you just said. What?
Incredible what I can do to the human body with my white girl rage, with my white girl, I'm fed up, I've had enough. But what I would have been able to do for myself in life with talent and all the potential and all the gifts that I have if the Black men in my life didn't snuff out that Black womanhood. I was just so sure because of them that acting like the average Black woman was the wrong thing to be. I wouldn't even eat watermelon and chicken.
Well, the thing is, a lot of Black men don't view you as a Black woman, so that's different. And I understand that. That's one thing I wanted to talk about, too. Is a lot of the time with Black men, they will complain about Black women to Black women like this. I should know, personally, being the same complexion as this lady, they will complain to people, sometimes. The thing is, it's a matter of how a person perceives it. Some of us don't perceive it as negative against Black women. Personally, for me, when a dark-skinned Black man goes after Black women and basically attacks dark-skinned Black women, I never internalize that. I never put that on dark-skinned Black women. A major reason why might be because, I grew up with dark-skinned Black females first. And I didn't really interact with dark-skinned Black men until I was 18. But I could imagine growing up with those type of men, of course, if they don't even see you that way, and they don't even see you as really a Black woman, or a Black girl, then you're going to fit into what they mold you to be, basically, So, you won't want to associate that much with Black women because that's what they molded you into being. And that's a sad thing. This is what I always say about the whole colorism issue. It's not just, dark-skinned Black women who, are told negative things about being dark-skinned Black women. It's the whole ballpark, basically, because those who are lighter complected will be put into another category of basically everything that you are is bad, but you don't look like what you are, and that's the only thing that's good about you, is that you can kind of hide what you truly are and pretend you're something else, and you can be kind of okay because we don't see you as looking like what you actually are, So, I mean, it's a terrible thing. You have people who basically are trying to be something else just to attract the thing that doesn't even like what it is. Because dark-skinned Black men are the ones who actually don't like themselves. That's why they are the ones complaining to Black women like this about Black women. Continue.
I mean, anything they called out as a stereotype, I avoided like the plague. I nestled myself right up under my Korean auntie and just, all right, oh, there's collard greens over there. There's a holiday ham over there. Oh, I want the japchae. That's what I want. Pass the kimchi. Pass the mandu. I'm good.
Yeah, I don't know. What are those things? You said something about collars? I don't know. What is that? You're saying chimchi. I don't know. Is that supposed to be something like similar to ethnic? Like, are you trying to say like Southern food? I guess. I don't know. Continue though.
I remember I started to look like one of my white aunts at one point, and she's Italian, the darker white. But there was just so much about me that was modeled after other women's womanhood.
You said look like? I'm confused. Did she just say she tried to look like her Italian aunt? I don't know. Maybe I misheard that. Maybe she's saying act like. I thought she said look like. I'm tired. It is in the middle of the night, but I just can't go to sleep, so I figured I'd tape. But I thought I heard look like, which is just a little odd to me. Continue.
And it's been to my detriment. So when people say, oh, typical Black woman, I'd be like, I wish. Typical Black women are awesome. Typical Black women have what other women don't. This is why the LGBTQ plus IA community, when they want to take on womanhood and express their femininity, they're not worried about white womanhood. They're not worried about Asian womanhood. They're not worried about Arab womanhood. They're not worried about Samoan womanhood. They immediately dress themselves in Black womanhood because Black womanhood is the only womanhood that will make you survive when your femininity and personhood is constantly on trial. It's the ultimate fight back. It's in your face femininity, light and dark. Light femininity, dark femininity. It's in your face with hair down to my waist, and I will cuss you out with these 4.5-inch acrylic nails.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by that, because I'm like, my family, no one in my family on my mom's side is anything like this at all. Like, what do you mean? I don't know. Maybe are you talking about what you're describing to me is like, isn't that, I thought that was more so like the people who are, I guess, ratchet, what they call ratchet, I think, right? Type of femininity, maybe? I don't know. But I don't think that's specific to Black women's femininity. But hey, who knows? Who knows? Continue.
Boo boo.
Huh?
I will have all these hoops and all this makeup and all this decked out in the trappings of bam boom pop womanhood and still lay it on you so you know who you're dealing with. It is undefeated womanhood. That's what that is. And that's what they took from me. I am I'm more delicate than my
Yeah, I don't know if it's undefeated femininity though. Because why is it so many people that have that type of behavior are the very types that will try and tear you apart and attack you because of their insecurity by just seeing you? I'm pretty sure Uppity has experienced that considering how Uppity looks. So I mean like I don't know, I don't relate to that. I don't understand what she's saying there. But yeah, continue, Uppity.
Please. More submissive than my Muslim girlfriends, more delicate than my Asian girlfriends, more fragile than, I've actually never had a white girlfriend. What I have had is mixed girlfriends with white mothers. I've never had an all-Black best friend, and I've never had an all-white best friend. They're either mixed or just straight up from like refugee immigrant communities, right?
Yeah, for me, I've generally related more with white women, and most of my friends have always been white, generally. My mother is the same way. I think my grandmother is the same way. And my family is kind of like this. We just relate to people based on the whole idea of people being along the same, I guess, values or culture as us. And that can many of the time fall along the lines of white Americans and Black Americans. I think you come from a Southern family, considering you talk about Southern food, I think think that's what you're trying to talk about. So you are more familiar with that, but like I think a northern family is more like we kind of mesh in culturally with black and white Americans together. And because of that, it's easier to kind of relate with other white Americans, and it's easier to relate with other black Americans from the same cultural background and the same kind of region that we're from. As I showed my regions of my native regions, basically Ohio and West Virginia were named, as well as Iowa wasn't named, but that's also another state that a lot of my family comes from. So a lot of my family does come from the north, and so that's why culturally speaking, we're kind of just influenced by our Midwestern heritage. Oh, yeah, and some of our Northeastern heritage too, because my mother's father is from New Jersey, and that side of the family has been in New Jersey at least since 1838 when the first Smith was born that I could track back. So, I mean, you know, we have a different type of heritage, I guess you could say, than a lot of other black Americans when it comes to cultural, regionally. And I think that's why it's just easier to relate with white and black Americans of the same background. But yeah, most of my best friends have been white American. Uh, and I had like two that were biracial with a white mother. So yeah, continuing though.
The blackest black close girlfriend that I've had was in college and from Nigeria. Um, Black girls did not rock with me. They did not like me. Just straight off the bat.
True, yeah. A lot of black women who fit this stereotype you're talking about, and I think I'm finally getting what you're talking about. Um, a lot of them don't like black women who don't fit the stereotype because, one, they might not like you because they might think you're something else altogether, since you do have a phenotype that is a little bit more mixed looking in phenotype, then add it to acting a little bit differently. But when you act differently than what they expect you to act in whatever way, they generally will get violent in some cases and even want to fight you. I know my mother's the same way. A lot of the time they want to fight her, and it's not just my mother, it's not just me, it's my grandma too. You know, I don't know if it goes further than that. I think, like I said, I think it's honestly a northern thing. I think a lot of black Americans are from the South, so they're not really familiar with the black Americans who have northern heritage or have a strong influence in the North, you know. So, continue.
And of course, there was a bunch of black men that tell me it's just because you're pretty, it's just because you look different from them, it's just because you exotic. But because
That's not completely it, though, because I mean, like, there are plenty of black women who act like those stereotypical black women and look like you, and they don't suffer the same way. That's how you know it's not just that. Then you have dark skinned black women who act differently from the stereotypical black woman, and those type of women get it. I think they get it more because a lot of the time, from my experience, it's always been like this. I've seen it where black women who were the stereotype would try and ask me, what am I mixed with, or what am I, or something of that nature, or please be from another country, basically. Because they don't like how I act, basically, and they want to excuse it for, oh, this is just because she's from a different culture. You're not acting like one of us. You must be from a different culture. And then if they can excuse it away, they'll be okay with you. Just like they're not freaking out that white people are, in their opinion, acting culturally different from them. When I don't really think white Americans are culturally different from black Americans, but this is what they basically are trying to say, basically. They don't act up or get upset at white people, for thinking they are different. They're fine with the white people being different because they're like, well, they're white. They're different. This is why they're different. They're okay with that. They're not okay with black people being different. And this is the thing why they get harder on dark-skinned black women, I think. Because I've seen with my mother, they came harder on my mother than they come on me because of the idea that they can't excuse her for being anything else because she's dark-skinned, because her facial features and things of that nature are very ethnic. A lot of Africans who see her actually think she's African, which could be her saving grace, kind of, because sometimes black Americans will look at her and think she's African. And that's not really a shock because she does have a high percentage of African ancestry. But yeah, continue.
And thank God my mom is a God-fearing woman who takes herself to account. I'm introspective as a result of being her child, and I'm just like, I am an Oreo.
There is no such thing as an Oreo. That's just nonsense. Some people think, like, blackness isn't something that is within, it's only from the outside. People are just individuals, and people act differently depending on who they are as people. Their blackness doesn't define them. I don't think uppity is any less black than another black person just because she was raised differently. She's just as black as the other people who are acting differently and acting like a stereotypical black woman, in quotes, of course. So that's my take on that. Just a little
I
more.
am the stereotypical white girl from the Pacific Northwest who is obsessed with black men, who loves black men, who is addicted to black men, who is all of that, without the kink of racism in my love, right? And this is why I call myself a former pick-me and a recovering mammy, right? Because every now and then mammy creeps out. Pick-me won't, but mammy will. I mean, honor my honesty, respect my realness.
I'm like that too when it comes to Pick Me because, like, people will get mad at me when Pick Me comes out, and it's like, I of course I'm gonna come out as a Pick Me sometimes because I'm not lying about being being hypergamous. You know, I don't have that idea of things. And people sometimes get mad at me for that and get all uncomfortable, like, oh, this is supposed to be a pick me channel or something, like that's an insult. And it's like, well, if you would have listened to me, I would have told you, I'm not hypergamous. If you want to call that pick me, that's fine. I don't have any preference towards a black man, and I don't have interest in black men. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think if you're attracted to other races, you can't be a pick me. It's like they use pick me to only reference people who are interested in black men. And it's like, that's not how it works. Pick me, it's just pick me. Pick me just means a strategy in dating, okay? Some people choose the pick me route, okay? Some people, it's their natural way of dating. That's their natural preference. Their interest is not going to be in someone's money, it's not going to be in their status. That's just not how I'm made, and that's just not how I think of my potential partner. Like, oh, he's got to be really wealthy. Why am I looking to him to be wealthy? What about me? Like, why am I looking to him to have money? He could look to me to have money. Like, isn't that pretty selfish in a sense? And I understand people think because you're a woman, you have different roles. I don't know about that. I'm not too big on those roles and things of that nature, femininity, all that stuff. Femininity seems broken to me anyway, so, Anyway, continue.
I got basically turned into the prototypical exotic other to this day. Most black men will immediately, and not even just because of how I look, but because of how I act and how I sound, they're just like, well, what are you? And I'm like, I'm so African American. They're like, there's no way. And I'm like, yeah, because I was genetically engineered by these
Yeah, to me, I don't know. Sometimes I don't. Is it really behavior? Because I'm like, to me, I don't really see that with behavior too much. Because if that's the case, then how come dark-skinned Black Americans do not get that reaction of what are you mixed with as much? Actually, maybe they do. I mean, is that what's going on with Star Puppy? I don't know. I'm really curious. Is that why people ask if she's mixed? Because she has a video on that. I don't know. I don't think so. You know, but I'm just thinking. Sorry. I don't know. I just think kind of like dark skinned Black women. I don't think get that assumption. Do they? Isn't it based off of your phenotype, and if you have a phenotype that could be mixed and your behavior is different, then they kind of act like it's a shock that you're not mixed or something else, right? Otherwise, they usually call the dark skinned Black women who have certain behaviors that are um, non stereotypical, basically, Orioles, like she just said, which, I mean, Oreo isn't a real term, like I said, because it doesn't define who you are in the inside. I do think that sometimes dark skinned Black people get the whole thing about being African. That does happen. That happens more often, actually.
Guys, my whole team of these guys who just hated Black womanhood. The first time I got called pretty as a child was obviously not by my Black uncles, right? Because they were telling me I was ugly, right? To my face as a small child, fragile, because
Well, I'm so sorry about that, ma'am. Really. She's beautiful. I mean, like, who would ever call her ugly? And I measured it too. She's like, well, I'm not gonna disclose her number, but she's very, very beautiful.
Again, Black manosphere. Um, but they had thrown me in a car with a bunch of girls that they were sleeping with, and they were constantly sleeping with other women. So I can get into that as well. But I mean, just womanizers to the nth degree. Not a faithful bone in their bodies, but Black men don't cheat. Anyhow, this girl, completely racially ambiguous, she was just like, "Can I braid your hair?" And I'm like, "Sure." She goes, "Chocolate, why are you so pretty and your uncles are so ugly?" And I just kind of looked down and shrugged, really humble kid, obviously, because of abuse. And I'm like, "I don't know." And I didn't say anything else. I did not speak very much. I was a writer, and part of the reason, people love, my diction, my word choice, my, the way that I sound is oftentimes poetic. I didn't talk. One, I had a lisp, and two, there was a lot of verbal and mental abuse. And you don't necessarily have to be talking to me, but whenever I see you talking to a reflection of me, kids are very narcissistic. They think everything's about them. So if you're talking crazy about a Black woman in front of me, I feel like you're talking to me. If you're having an argument with my mother, I'm going to start crying because everything is about you when you're a child. You don't know that there's a world
I don't know, that's different.
outside of you when you're a child, and this is why you have to really be careful about the way that you behave in front of children and the way that you treat other people in front of children. I internalized all that. So these men, my mom would be, at the beauty salon.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the problem was you emphasized too much value in the opinion of dark-skinned Black men who didn't love themselves. You didn't see for what it was. And I feel like this is the premise of her channel. She's constantly blaming the dark-skinned Black women for the dark-skinned Black men's view of them, And I don't think that that's her fault. She's explaining that she was raised around these people and with their perspective. So she's saying she internalized that. because what she was raised around with the dark-skinned black men who belittled her. And for some reason, I don't get why her mother, didn't teach her how to, actually have pride in herself, and how, ideal black women are as women themselves, and how to be proud of being a black woman. But I guess from what I'm hearing, she's saying that her mother was so focused on black men that that she was basically muling for them and mammying for them so much that she didn't even care for her own image or her daughter's image. And so that's why that perspective is completely different, and changed for her, you know. And, I think that that's kind of, not the most healthiest way to view it. But I mean, I hope she does work her way through it so then she has a better view of black womanhood, and being a black woman, in total. Some of the things she said here, I definitely did relate to. And I think this is a great video. I'm going to actually like it because, yeah, that was a good video. From what I could see, I like seeing people's perspectives, even if I don't agree with everything they said. Here, she was definitely relatable. And that's why I like this video. So that's all I have to say in this video. I'm tired now. So like and subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see your comments later on. Have a great day. Bye.